Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Alfonso Barrenechea. I'm a project manager here at Solarplaza. And today, with my two guests, we will be discussing the other side of aging assets, replacing legacy monitoring solutions. So basically, we'll be speaking on the data side of repowering. With me, I have two solar experts. I have Francesco Girardi, Senior Director at Bluefield Partners. Bluefield Partners is an investment specialist firm based in London. They focus on renewable energy assets and in particular in solar PV. And our second speaker is Yannis Grammatikakis. He's the Senior Product Manager at Inaxis. And Inaxis is one of the top worldwide independent providers of control and monitoring solutions for both utility and storage plants. Inaxis is also active in other renewable energy markets, such as wind and hybrid technologies. To give you a brief rundown on how this webinar will look like, I'll start with some quick notes that'll hopefully help you make your webinar experience a bit better. And then we'll go into a co-presentation by both our guests, Francesco and Yannis. Finally, we'll leave about 15 to 20 minutes for the Q&As, and then we'll wrap up the webinar. A little bit about Solarplaza before I start. So our mission is to positively impact the world by accelerating the sustainable energy transition. We do this in a number of ways, right? We do both virtual and physical events. We've done over 150 of those in over 40 countries. We started in 2004. We also produce different content such as this webinar or white papers. And we boast a network of over 60,000 solar professionals. A little bit about the upcoming conference and the reason we're organizing this webinar. So our conference, Solar Asset Management Europe, will take place in person this 15th and 16th of September in Frankfurt, Germany. And the idea with this conference is to discuss, the different asset management and O&M topics we've discussed in previous years, and as well as add some of the new topics. So for example, we have some typical topics like O&M strategies, the evolution of asset management. We have some new topics such as the rise of ESG investing. What does this mean for different asset owners and asset managers? How does this change your reporting schemes, for example? We'll also talk about digitizing your operations, and we'll have a workshop on storage as well. Some final notes from my side. If you have technical issues at any point, feel free to use the question box. If you have any Q&As for the speakers, for the presenters, even as they're presenting, feel free to leave it in the chat or in the question box. Sorry. And as the webinar continues, I'll be sorting for the questions, and for the Q&A session, we'll be answering these questions. So I do encourage you guys to ask your question as soon as you have it. Yeah, we will wait for the answers until the Q&A part. But if we have all the answers already, all the questions are already sorted for the Q&A time, we might be able to go through a couple more questions. Finally, the presentation slides and the full recordings will be made available. Everyone who registered for this webinar will end up getting an email within 1 or 2 days with the instructions on how to access both the recordings as well as the slides. Yeah, but with that being said, Yannis and Francesco, I'd like to give you the stage. You now have rights over the presentation, Yannis, and you guys can take it away from here.
Hello to everyone, by me as well. Thank you, Alfonso, and Solarplaza for setting this up. It is. I hope that it will be interesting for all the participants to discuss about the replacing of legacy monitoring system, and this is what we call hardware retrofit. So there are a lot of reasons, a lot of drivers to do a hardware retrofit. But before going into this, it would be good to have a quick look at the market. So what are the possible assets that will require such a hardware retrofit? So in our experience, any site that is like 5 or 6 years old or more, it is a possible candidate for the replacing of the existing monitor system. And as we see in this slide, in EU alone, there are several sites, a total of 137 gigawatts is already installed by 2020, but we can clearly see that during the years of 2009 and up to 2013, there was a lot of new assets installed at that time. And our experience is that many of those assets, the actual specifications for the monitoring system were not very great. They were very, let's say, poor in essence. And as all those sites getting older and older, there's clear a need for a retrofit there. And before I start discussing about why to do this hardware retrofit, I will ask Francesco also to comment on the market and the Bluefield that is very active also in the secondary market. His point of view is very interesting. So, Francesco.
Yes, thank you very much to Ioannis, and thanks to Solarplaza to organize this webinar. As Ioannis mentioned, as we can see from this slide about the European solar market cumulative installed capacity per year, so we see that the bulk of the solar farms installation have gone through the very limited period of years between 2010 and 2012 or 2013. And there was a majority of the construction of new solar farms around Europe. So these nowadays we are about 10 years later from this first solar boom, and so we have the industry is matured very much, and the experience of all the stakeholders involved in the development, construction, asset management, operation, and maintenance of the asset have been tremendously growing as well. So we have learned from past mistakes. So we are preparing for the future, and but not all the plants which were built in those years were at the same level of standards and practices we are building a solar farm nowadays. So that's why when we do invest on brownfield projects, when we buy assets from on the secondary market, we usually face a number of challenges which are related to the lack of proper collection of data from existing solar farms, or lack of reliable operational data. And so ourselves, we've been very active in buying operational assets, as well as investing in greenfield projects. And many times we have experienced those issues ourselves, which have had an important impact on our ability to make a proper evaluation of the asset, and to understand on one side how to evaluate the portfolio you are buying, you are bidding for. On the other hand, how to reliably assess the past performance and the future performances of the asset based on the past operational data. So this is, of course, one of the reasons why we do believe that having a very good and reliable data collection system, as well as monitoring and control system, is definitely value added for a portfolio of a project, either to sell or to buy.
Great, Francesco. Alfonso, do we have our first poll ready? Is it already presented? So we have prepared together with Francesco and Alfonso 2-3 quick polls just to get your opinion on several topics here. So the first one is, do you think it is good value for money to invest in a monitoring retrofit from brownfield projects? Yes or no? Please answer this question so we can also understand your interest in this. That's an impressive result. 93 yes. That's very good. So we share the same opinion here.
Yeah, I think it's very impressive to see that the overwhelming majority thinks that is good value for money. And so maybe let's continue going through our presentation, and just to maybe have also interaction with the audience on the topic of retrofitting monitoring system.
Yes, and we can now continue with the main reasons, the main drivers behind doing all this effort of the hardware retrofit. So from a technical viewpoint, the main reason is that the current system has problems. And this can come from several different ways. One, for example, is that the current vendor is not providing the right service. This is something that we see in many countries. When there is a boom in the market, a lot of companies come there, they install the systems, but when the actual build is reduced, they don't have either the ability or they don't have the plan and the budget to support the existing installations. So several assets are there without any real support from the existing vendor, and this is, of course, very problematic. One thing that we also see very, very often is that several vendors are now out of business. So there are many companies that they have a system in the past, like 10 or 8 or 5 years ago, and they are no longer in the business. So what is actually installed on site is a black box. No one can actually maintain this, and not to mention that there's no upgrades, no new features, nothing. So it's just a dead piece of hardware there that you hope that is still working. And with the first failure, no one knows what to do with that. And there's also another case that the actual system, as Francesco said before, the specs and the standards were not so good. So what you have on site is very, very basic. So a few, let's say, measurements from the inverters, and that's all. And with those kind of data, you are not able to run any analysis. At the end of the day, how good is the analysis that you perform on the data is very much dependent on the quality of the primary data. Otherwise, whatever analytic, artificial intelligence, machine learning that our platform, for example, is able to do is useless if you don't have the right primary data. You have the usual effect of garbage in, garbage out. So, and that's the main reason to do the retrofit. And apart from that, there is another very important driver here, is that with the consolidation that is now happening, and we see companies that they now have more and more assets, they have a very big portfolio of assets, and now it makes sense to have a uniform data architecture across the whole fleet. And you need one vendor that is able to support you from the site up to the cloud. You don't need to have 10 different Mondo system on sites that you cannot actually have proper support on them. And if something breaks, there is, this figure pointing on who is responsible for what. While with a hardware retrofit, you have a full uniform and homogeneous architecture of high quality that enables you to achieve your business goal. Future proofing is another very significant reason to do this hardware retrofit, because if you install a modern and a good monitor system, then a software upgrade, for example, can enable you to have control functionality. And in the market now, it is very significant to be able to actually dispatch your assets, to control your assets, and to be able to have all your renewable assets either standalone or as a part of a VPP that can be controlled, and they can provide auxiliary services, and they can be more active in the market participation. And finally, there is also the repowering process that is a very good opportunity for a retrofit of the SCADA system. So if you are doing a repowering of inverters, for example, then this is absolutely necessary to change the monitor system as well, because the old monitor system will not work with the new inverters. You have to reconfigure everything. So at the end of the day, you go in the process of the retrofit. So this is a very good opportunity to do this. Now, Francesco can also give us his perspective as the owner for the drivers of doing this retrofit.
Yes, thanks, Ioannis. I think that I will touch, we start from your latest point, is about the future-proofing the asset. Nowadays, guys, and I touched upon this earlier on, the experience of all stakeholders and the maturity of our all players has increased tremendously in the past years. But also we are now preparing for a new era of assets that will be mainly driven by pure energy sales on the spot market or through PPA. So we need to have a system, a plant, which is able to compete also in this market. And definitely installing a monitoring system or having a monitoring system with controlling capabilities on site will definitely help the owners also to add the new revenues streams to the cash flow generation of the asset through the participation to ancillary service market. So we've been experiencing this in the UK as well as in other European countries, where to have a grid, to improve the grid stability, to improve the balancing, the critical balancing between offer and demand, the operator and either at the transmission or distribution level are opening the market of ancillary services to asset owners. So having a system which is capable to control the site and the equipment on site to participate to these ancillary services is definitely a good value for money. From our end, another reason why having a very good and reliable monitoring system on an asset is definitely linked with the evaluation of portfolio assets during the transaction. Lack of operational data, lack of past history, lack of proper O&M reports, lack of asset management report, lack of information about past performances of the asset, where the only figure maybe you can rely on are revenues, and based on electricity price or feed-in tariff level, which then ultimately will help you calculate how much kilowatt hours will generate year by year. In most cases, the only source of data for a proper evaluation of the asset. So, and we've been challenged by this in many occasions where we had to rely on third-party advisors to make studies or to prepare an analysis or future yield analysis for understanding or assessing the performances of the asset, or at least the expected performances of the asset. Having a good monitoring system in place will also improving the reporting to our stakeholders. Our investors are keen to know not only if the money they're invested on is generating, of course, expected return, but also very keen to understand how the asset they've invested their money into are performing. Having good quality reports is made of collection, is based on collecting good data and reliable data that can be assembled in the proper reporting. So that's why also data collection is another reason why we think that, and based on our experience, that a good and reliable data collection is the basis for advanced statistical analysis and the ability to run or develop smart algorithms, which are the basis for whatever we can call a condition-based maintenance or predictive-based maintenance approach, where we can proactively identify issues which might potentially explode or cause more important failure. So early detection of failure will be definitely a very good data collection. And the last but not least is that in the new subsidy-free world, most of the off-taker are also very keen to get access to sometimes real-time data, but also semi-real-time data as a key requirement in their PPA agreements. Back to you, Ioannis.
Thank you. So, having analyzed the drivers, we have another poll question for you. What percentage of your existing projects older than 5 years, but this is not a requirement, do you think should be retrofitted? More than 50%, less than 50%, less than 25%, none. So if you think all those reasons that me and Francisco has said up to now, what do you think of your existing assets? So we have like 40% that is none or less than 25%. So it is also remarkable that only 10% is none, which is something that we also think of it, that it is almost very seldom to have several aging assets and none of them need an intervention like that. So this is something that we also anticipated, and we also have a good percentage of 40% that the answer is that more than 50% is actually need a replacement like that, which means that there are actually several assets out there that they have to be retrofitted. And now let's have a look of the process. So how does it look like, this implementation process for the hardware retrofit? So the process starts, of course, by gathering all the information of the current existing system. The main differentiation factor between a brownfield retrofit and a greenfield installation is that in a retrofit, we don't start from scratch, and we have the goal to retain the equipment, as much equipment as possible of the existing monitor system. So we don't want to replace everything. We want to keep the sensors if they are good. We want to keep the existing network, the switches. We want to keep remote IOs, everything that can be reused, because this will actually make the retrofit possible. Otherwise, the cost will increase. And if we are to change everything, imagine that if we are also to do some new wiring, you end up with a cost like the initial installation of the monitor system, which usually is a problem, because you may have the budget during the development and the initial construction, but when the asset is old and is in operation, this budget is under the O&M budget, and usually it is much smaller. And it's not only this, it's not only a matter of money, it's also a matter of time, it's also a matter of having all the people there. So if you have to replace everything, imagine that you have to lay new wires and create new ditches and lay them. This can be an overhead that will make the whole process impossible. So from the beginning, we start with a goal to keep as much as possible and replace the heart of the system, which is usually the data logger, the controller. So we want to change all the existing data loggers with new ones that have a new fresh software there that enable them to connect to our platform. And at the same time, we are going also to provide a new warranty for those devices. In order to be able to do this, you have to get all the information for the asset, which is, of course, single line diagrams of inverters, protection devices, meters, etc., the layouts, but most importantly, to get the information of the existing system, as builds, etc. And this sometimes can be hard to find. And for this reason, we have many cases in the past that we have the only information, for example, we had to do the retrofit was a few photos. There was no documents for the existing monitor system, and this is also more common in the cases that the asset has changed many hands. So if it is already sold, if you cannot find the original EPC, this is another problem. Usually all this information is from the EPC. If the EPC that has built the asset is not there anymore, is out of business, then you have another problem. There is no one to ask, or the original owner cannot be reached, so you end up having nothing. In that cases, a site visit may be necessary. So in order for one of our people to go on site, check all the equipment, check all the communication, etc. To be honest, we try to avoid those site visits before installation, because this is another cost. And trying to squeeze the cost, adding site visits, it's not okay, of course. The good thing, fortunately, is that with the experience that we have built all this year, in most of the cases, we can avoid the site visits, and we can work, as I said before, with a few photos, and our team is prepared when they actually go on site to do the retrofit. They have some more devices with them, so if something is needed, they can on the fly install it. So once you have all the data, then it goes to the design and planning phase. So we evaluate all the different options of what to keep and what to replace, and we have to end up with the best compromise between the cost and the functionality and the reliability of the new system. Our goal is always to provide the best possible system with the cost that is in the budget of the owner. And our experience in all those retrofits that now we have more than 1 gigawatt, it's like 1.5 gigawatts now. I think we are successful in that. Once everything is designed, and then we can have the actual execution. So we have the preparation of the new devices, shipment of them on site, the actual installation and commissioning. Many times our own personnel is visiting the site, because as I told you before, most of the cases doing a brownfield project, a hard retrofit, is more difficult than a greenfield. In a greenfield, you have a clear design, new equipment, you can send clear instructions to the EPC, and they can easily install the system without our great support there. But for existing projects, you have to be a communication expert and a control system expert to understand what to change, how to install it, how to troubleshoot, because we understand that we are asked to replace a system and communicate with DC boxes and inverters that may be very old. The inverter may be out of business at the moment. They have proprietary protocols. The buses may have problems. So all this troubleshooting, so as to make the new retrofit system 100% operational, need a lot of expertise and experience in order to quickly find issues and solve them. Once all this is done, then we have the final step, which is the training of the O&M team, which is again another very important step, because now this is a system that the team will use to provide the services. So they have, if they don't know us, they have to understand the system, they have to trust the new system, they have to understand how all the KPIs are calculated, so they can efficiently perform their duties, which is the actual operation and maintenance. And not only the system itself, I mean the cloud system on how to see the site and understand the problems, also how to maintain the on-site system. And within this process, we also create new partners there that they are able to provide the maintenance of the existing system and work closely with us, so as the owner at the end of the day, they have a full service and a system that is operational 100% from the site up to the cloud and the reports and the analytics, and even at the market integration. Of course, as you understand, all this process that it seems to be lengthy, it's not all the time. So we have many sites that we have performed retrofits, in a few weeks, but sometimes there are challenges. So Francesco will discuss about those challenges. But before that, we have another poll question for you. Alfonso? So what are the biggest challenges when you're facing a retrofit? Finding the right vendor, collecting necessary data, financing the retrofit. We would like to see your opinion on these things. It seems that collecting the necessary data and financing the retrofit are the major issues there, with like more or less the same percentage. So Francesco, do you want to share your experience as an owner for the challenges?
Yeah, I think that I'm definitely in line with the results of this whole question, because as an asset owner, we have experienced the same issues as the audience. Of course, now thanks to the progress made on this field, there are qualified vendors which are able to provide very good and reliable products. I think finding a suitable vendor is not an issue, because again, there is a lot of experience and a very good manufacturers. And I think that one of the challenges that we as an owner have been particularly, of course, busy with is being understanding do we have the money? Is there enough budget? Where is there a good amount of money that we can invest on the retrofit of a new monitoring system? Of course, this is always a cost-benefit analysis, and we have gone this exercise many times. And depending on the issues that are affecting the site, no, this is not a huge amount of money. It can be where you have a good infrastructure, at least a good communication infrastructure, then the hardware retrofit is not very costly. Something different, of course, is where you have a site with the poor infrastructure communication links. Then you have to spend more money. It's not because you're lacking of proper hardware to collect and manage data, but you don't have the proper infrastructure. And also, maybe this process can be more time-consuming and difficult. Of course, the complexity of it increases as the as the capacity of the site increases. Of course, a 100 megawatt site has got different complexity, and then retrofit on one single megawatt site. And of course, the difference is when you have a central inverter or string inverters. So the design process, the data collection process, is more controversial and time-consuming for larger sites. Another important challenge is when you have to provide the control capabilities, to add control capabilities to a monitoring system, where you have to interface with the grid operator. Sometimes this process can be very time-consuming, lengthy process, because it depends on the proactiveness or lack of quick support you can get from the local utilities or the DNO operators. Another important challenge is coming from how old the equipments are installed at the site are, and because you can spend a lot of time maybe to try to review. So because our challenge also and our objective, as Ioannis mentioned earlier, is to reuse or reduce the number of components to remove from site, and then also to reduce our ecological footprint by reducing the amount of waste we can generate. We tend to reuse as much as possible the existing device on site. But most of the time, those are very old equipment, and you cannot get enough documentation, and it will take also some time to collect those information. I'm talking about interface devices, about a data collector, about sensor, other stuff. Overall, you know, the process is can be time consuming because also the lack of proper information. I think one of the challenges we have experienced so far is that because this process is always, you know, post sale. So when you buy asset, is because maybe you don't have the access to the set of information you might have as when you build the site. So because maybe the asset owner was not diligent and didn't have a tracker or summary of all data you need, because sometimes those data are lost between different O&M operators which have been operating the site. Most of the time you don't have access to login details of a particular device site. So we have developed, you know, together with Naxos, we have developed a protocol and a data collection system by which we can quickly supersede those challenges and overcome the difficulties we already mentioned. So I would mention now a couple of case studies where we have done hardware retrofit on our portfolio. One of them is our UK-based portfolio. To Bluefield, we have gone through an important hardware retrofit project within Access, where we have retrofitted around 35 plants for circa 500 megawatt of the existing portfolio in the UK from existing different vendors to in Access, in order to have a homogeneous portfolio monitoring system, which was definitely helping us in improving our reaction time as well as our data analysis and reporting capabilities. This was not as difficult as we thought, because those were assets which were owned and operated by Bluefield for many years. So we were able to manage properly the data collection exercise I mentioned before. So now all these assets are within a Unity CMS platform, and these are the basis tool for our O&M engineers and our asset managers to daily look at operating and monitoring the asset performances. The next slide, case study, is about a recent acquisition of an Italian portfolio. So when we bought the asset, and this was one of the cases or the instance where we faced the challenge about lack of past operational data. So those sites were not performing well, and unfortunately there was a lack of historical data. I can tell you that when the O&M operator came on board, they realized that there was no subscription. There was a hardware installed, but no software installed. So the data were collected, but no one was able to gather those data and analyze those data. And then the O&M contractor, to be able to, of course, to provide their services, had to install their own data loggers to collect the data from site. Of course, now when we bought the asset, we were in a situation where we should have relied upon the O&M contractor monitoring system, which is not, you see, the right situation for us, because we wanted to have a system, which is independent from the operator. Because maybe we don't want to be tied up with the existing operator. We don't want to be also in control of the login details and everything else. So this was one of the decisions why we decided now to move and doing a retrofit, hardware retrofit of the monitoring system across the 10 sites. And the other challenges we faced, and which was very, with not a big effort, but with the proper management of the various tasks, was that this retrofit took place during the COVID-19 restriction. And so thanks to the support of in-access engineer from Greece, and the local contractor on site, we were able to retrofit those assets very quickly, by installing the required hardware on site and having remotely engineers from Greece to oversee all the configuration and commissioning tasks. I mean, this slide will I would like to show this slide very quickly, just to mention something. I do challenge the audience to know if maybe you as asset owner or operator, do you know whether your inverters are performing well? You know that the main components of a solar farm are modules and inverters. The inverter is the brain of the solar farm. If the brain doesn't work well, we lose functionalities, we lose efficiencies. And having a proper monitoring system, which will enable our engineer to collect and extract meaningful data from the equipment on site, will definitely help understanding, for example, how the inverter are performing. How is the inverter efficiency? Has the data sheet? Are the inverter MPPT tracking? No, the sun as they should to improve the performances of the inverter themselves. As you can see from this chart, where the blue line is the MPPT input voltage of the inverter, while the red and the green lines are the inverter MPPT currents, and the yellow one is the irradiance. As you can see, the inverter MPPT are not following the irradiance at all. So this is a situation where we have been able to detect through this predictive analysis the fact that the inverter were not performing as they should. So this is to say that there are some benefit by adding a new monitoring system to an existing asset, and they comes with the opportunity then to enhance the performances of the asset. In our experience, I can easily tell that having a monitoring system has improved the overall performance of the asset by 2-3%. So now let's move maybe toward the conclusion and to summarize now what has been discussed so far. As I mentioned, that for us as asset owners, having a proper good data collection and management system is essential for proper evaluation of the asset, for improving the performances, as well as the safety and reliability of the asset. As I mentioned earlier, this will also give us the opportunity to participate in the ancillary service market. Johannes, I'll leave this to you to continue.
Yes, I think, thank you, Francesco. It was very, very good description of the effort we have done together in the last years that we are working together and going through this retrofit, which will be very happy that we have helped you optimize your assets. And of course, all this clarity in data that a good monitor system can provide can find all the underperformance spots. It can see all the little things that can go unnoticed, but if you add them, there is really a lot of kilowatt hours there. And of course, kilowatt hours is money for the owner. The retrofits can be harder than the greenfield projects, but if you have the experience and if you do a correct design and make the correct decisions of what is the actual intervention, you can make this happen, and you can make this happen within your budget and on time. And once the retrofit is completed, you have a new monitor system that is complemented with our Unity platform, which will unleash the potential for performance and revenue optimization. And this will be done with various analytics which will now operate on reliable data and will analyze the various losses and provide actionable information to the O&M teams. And this will also make your asset management easier because you can focus on what is actionable. You can see all the losses and understand those are the losses from the inverters, those are the losses from the strings. So if this part is big, you can have all the efforts there to solve these issues. And of course, with the control capabilities that we can add on top, the asset will be ready for the future, for the more dynamic energy marketplace that is coming now for the renewable resources. And if I may add here, even beyond the solar domain, we have examples in the UK that we do retrofits in battery projects where, with adding a new control system, we allow the assets to go from the existing FFR service that can pay like £5 per megawatt per hour to the new dynamic containment, which now pays 16 or 17 pounds per hour by just retrofitting the control system and adding new power quality analyzers. And if you combine also the solar with battery assets, then you have more and more new opportunities for new revenue streams. With this phrase, I will stop our presentation so as to leave some time for Q&A. We have 10 more minutes, so it will be great to hear from you and answer your questions.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you, Francesco and Yanis, for this very informative presentation. There are plenty of questions actually, and one of them is relating to what you were just mentioning, Yanis, on future-proofing your assets, right? Taking into account already, storage or future ancillary services. We have a question that says, what should you at the initial development stage take into account to one day make retrofits easier? Is this spare parts? Is this ensuring that data collection is impeccable, or what is the best practices that you can suggest on creating new builds? Already mentioning all these retrofit issues that you have experienced, what are the best ways to avoid these for 2030, 2035?
I will answer, and then Francesco can also add. The most important thing is to have all the information. So when you have the final acceptance, be sure that you are with a SCADA that is 100% operational. There's no blind spots, there are no loose ends. You have all the data available down to the smallest detail, down to the last device, the IP of the last device. And this will allow in the future to have all the information there. So if you actually need to replace the system, you have all the data there.
Yes, if I may add on that, Ioannis, that's a very valid point. So usually, some asset owners, they didn't care too much about getting data or login details or other information related to the monitoring system, because maybe the monitoring system was not seen as a crucial part of a solar farm. So the recommendation is definitely, prior to provision acceptance or to final acceptance whatsoever, please ensure that you collect all the meaningful data, IP addresses, IP mapping, login details, SLDs, updated SLDs. This is very, very important to the extent that the quality of this information documentation is high. Then this will definitely help reducing the time and the effort of the retrofitting company to speed up the process and to install quickly the new system.
All right, excellent. Thanks for that. So yeah, we were just talking on what are things to take into account for future projects you're building to make sure they will be compatible with whatever retrofit option. But now another of our attendees is asking, what is the biggest factor that affects the duration of the retrofitting process? So basically, what would you say is the biggest bottleneck? Based on your presentation, we can assume maybe it's, again, collecting the right data, but you also mentioned a bit on being in touch with the right monitor O&M team, or being able to communicate across your team. What would you say is the biggest factor that affects the time taken to retrofit a project?
I will start first. For me, it's definitely data collection. The data collection exercise, I will stress this point many times, but it's really very difficult. And you need to get support and cooperation. The role of the O&M operator is essential because they are the people on site, the technicians on the ground, the electrician on the ground, which have to log in physically and manually on the system to get the password or to get the IP addresses whatsoever.
I agree with Francesco. So if you have the data available, the process can be really fast. If you don't have the data available, then you have to go to site visits, reverse engineering, and all this process may delay at least the 100% completion of the retrofit, because we can do the retrofit, but if you don't have any information, you may have a few devices that are not communicating, and then you have to find data, and if those data are not available, you have to reverse engineering, and this can take some time. Of course, in the meantime, you may have a system that is operational like 95%, that it's not bad. But we want to provide the best service. So for us, 100 completion is a completion.
Yeah, one other point I would like to mention is the importance of the communication infrastructure link. So maybe before embarking on a new monitoring system retrofit, is important to ensure the quality of the communication infrastructure. So you have to maybe spend some time on testing all the communication cables, the power supply that you have already available on site. Make sure that those are good quality and good standard for the right installation, the right place.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for clarifying that, Francesco. Speaking on communication, I think there's an interesting question here on if you could share some of the best practices or experiences you've had when mentioning on the O&M team that would require some additional training or briefing to understand how the retrofit was done. I'm curious to hear first from your side, Yannis, how, as someone who provides retrofit options or repowering options, how do you see, what is the ideal O&M team providing you? I'm going to guess it's all the data you need, but aside from that, what is it? And then for you, Francesco, from the owner's perspective, same question.
From our perspective, we want the O&M to be a player in the team. So this is a teamwork. So we want the O&M to embrace this effort, to be with us when we do the retrofit, so as to understand what is the new equipment, because at the end of the day, he will be asked to maintain it. So we are very happy when we have, and this is happening in most of the times. Now the O&M teams, they take SCADA seriously. So we want the people from the O&M team to be together with us when we do the retrofit, so they have a full understanding of what is there, how to maintain it, and then with our help and providing training, and we are very rigorous in providing a lot of hours of training in our platform to make them use all the capabilities of the system. So the better they know the system, the better they can provide O&M, and this will also, it's a win-win for all of us, for us as vendors, for them because they provide a good service, and for the owner that he is receiving a good service, and the happy owner will give more work to the O&M. This is how we see this whole process, a win-win for all the key stakeholders.
On top of that, I will add that from an asset owner perspective, is essential post-sales service from the monitoring provider. And because we might experience issues, from time to time, and we might experience, maybe data communication or data losses, during the first weeks or months post installation. But we need to have an operator on the other end, on the other side, which is very promptly responding to our queries. The role of the O&M contractor is definitely crucial. I can tell you that in the Italian project retrofit program, the work was conducted with the support of our O&M operator and engineers from in-access based in Greece. The role of the O&M operator is very, very crucial in ensuring that the process, again, on the ground is run smoothly.
Great, excellent. Then I think we have time for one final question, and yeah, let's see if we can get an answer on this one. So one of our audience members is asking if you have some some tangible numbers or an example or a case study on a specific retrofit, and in terms of improvement, ideally in percentage, how big were you able to see the improvement in one of your retrofit projects? In case you're not able to share those details, I would also be curious in hearing the biggest difference in now monitoring or the performance of that newly retrofitted project. Was the biggest difference the new data insights you were receiving? Was the biggest difference now the inverter was able to respond better to certain power demands, or what would you say ideally in a percentage the improvement, and then otherwise an example of what you saw clearly as an improvement during the retrofit?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's very long to answer. Maybe we need a few minutes more, because I can tell that we have a direct experience in measuring, the value enhancement or the performance enhancement following from or subsequent to the installation, or the ability to collect reliable data. I think this is the monitoring system, the data collection is just the beginning of the story, guys. What is important is the ability to have a dedicated team of engineers, of people who are able to analyze data. So we need to start from the beginning, of course, to have a hardware and software suitable to collect reliable data. But once those data are collected, we need people or software or tools. Now there are a lot of algorithms based on machine learning or artificial intelligence who can crunch those numbers and extract information from us. By these exercises, this is where you add value to a portfolio of assets. I can tell you that in our experience, we have seen improving the performances of the asset by 2-3% at least. And those are tangible figures. You can appreciate those figures after a few months of having access to the monitoring system. Why is this possible? It's a combination of data collection as well as the ability also for the O&M operator to see, okay, there is a fault, there is a failure. How big is it? How important is that? How quickly have to react to ensure that the proper operation of the plant is restored quickly. So it's important that together with the monitoring system, it goes also an alert and warning messaging system. And then if you are able, with the right vendors, with the right algorithm, also to process automatically those alerts and warnings, then you can easily also integrate ticketing management features within the monitoring system, so that maybe a ticket is issued as soon as an important failure happened.
Great. Anything from your side, Yanis?
I definitely agree with Francesco and the percentage, and we don't have to. We must not forget it's not only the performance improvement; it's also the operational savings that you may have with a good system in day-to-day work. So the O&M service can be more efficient, the asset management service can be more efficient, the reporting can be more efficient, and can save also a lot of OPEX from the owner and the teams that are spent for the day-to-day works. So it is one thing. It's of course the performance improvement, and another thing is also the optimization of the operations.
Great. Thanks both of you for that answer. I think with that answer we can conclude the Q&A part of the session. And for all of us, for all of the viewers, if you're interested in more of these type of conversations, these type of Q&As, I encourage all of you to check out our events. The first two events we'll have this year are coming up already in July. You see Solar Market Parity Portugal, the 8th of July happening in Lisbon. And then on the 15th of July, we'll have an Italian event, Solar Market Parity Italy, in Milan. If you're more interested in topics along asset management and O&M like we were just discussing, you can check out our event, Solar Asset Management North America, happening late October in Oakland in the US, and of course the event I was just mentioning on Europe as well, Solar Asset Management Europe, which will take place the 15th and 16th of September. If you're interested in events but want to get even further detail on very specific topics, actually one of our colleagues, Marcel Langone, opened the Solarplaza consultancy. So I encourage anyone who has these very specific questions, similar to the ones we were answering in the Q&A. Perhaps you don't have access directly to one of the experts who can answer this question. My colleague in the consultancy will make sure that he connects you with whoever is the right stakeholder for this. With all of this being said, once more, I would like to thank you, Francesco and Yanis. I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for those very thoughtful questions. I think this will conclude the webinar. And again, I encourage everyone to check out the Solar Asset Management Europe. We'll have in access, we'll have Francesco speaking on topics on digitization, on O&M improvement, as well as some asset management strategies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, both of you. Have a good day. Goodbye, everyone.
And you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.